Hello everyone watching at home, you're with Simon McClinton from Adelaide Eternal, bringing you another 7-minute 7-point series deck tech. This time I'm bringing you my deck, which is Esper Miracles. Now, Esper Miracles is a synergy control deck, so it looks at the synergy between these two groups of cards, the Enablers and the Miracles, rather than a raw power control deck like Kespile. So what it is actually a blue-white control deck with a very light black splash for some of these key cards, meaning we can't really play double black cards like the powerful Hymn to Turak or Liliana Last Hope. And also, we don't get the opportunity to dabble with some of the really cool lands like Halimar Depths, which let us set up Miracles. They're all far too cute with the new Back to Basics meta. So a little bit of a casualty of war there. So we do have to play things like a basic Swamp, even though we've only got something like 7 or so black spells and some in the side. So with that aside, let's look at how the deck actually works. So if you played Miracles in Legacy, you'll be familiar with the ability to set up a Miracle to get more bang for your buck. Now, we don't have as many enablers in Highlander, so we have to be a little bit creative. The mainstays are there, so Sensei's Divining Top and Jace the Mind Sculptor and Brainstorm, but we do have to dabble with Portent as well, and one of the powerful cards in the deck is Mystical Tutor. So Mystical Tutor is worth 2 points, and it's worth every point when you actually get its full value, which is end of turn, Mystical, set up exactly what you need for the following turn before your opponent had the ability to, say, interact with that or the miracle you're about to set up. So some of the miracles are obviously Terminus, which sweeps away the board, and this sketchy miracle, Devastation Tide. This is solely in here because we'd actually want to play 2 Terminus, but we simply can't. You can, if you don't want to go heavy on the miracles, play the Toxic Deluge from the sideboard into here in the main. But try this out. You'll notice that it's actually quite decent at buying you tempo early in the game, and then once you pass turn 5 and you've actually survived, you can claw your way back with powerful card advantage spells. Now, one of the best enablers in the deck is actually Aminatu the Fate Shifter. Her abilities are always relevant. Her first one is the most important, which is basically saying always set up your miracle every time you need to. Similar to Jace the Mind Sculptor, but 1 mana less. Treat her like Dak Faden for the mana cost there and for the sketchy weird loot. The -1 is actually quite relevant in this particular deck because you have cards like Trinket Mage and Spellseeker as creatures, as well as Baleful Strix, all of which just generate us card advantage, allowing us to abuse this. Now, we have Trinket Mage here to find Sensei's Divining Top, but we also have Engineered Explosives and an Academy Ruins to recur it. For Spellseeker, we do have the one, shame play that you have to play, which is Spellseeker into Brainstorm to set up a miracle, but you do have more powerful plays than that, which is looking for Mystical Tutor and setting up your following turn, or just useful cards. Now, sometimes you need to tear apart a hand or set up a draw, and one of the best ways to set up a draw is with Predict. So Predict is a draw 2, basically, in the deck, almost consistently. After these cards here that generate some kind of value when they come into play, you have the instant speed spell powerhouses in Fact or Fiction and Esper Charm. Not many other decks get to play this, but it's a really, really good draw step, discard both of your cards in a control matchup, and it's also a good end of turn draw 2 cards. Also note that this destroys Back to Basics and Blood Moon. These are your usual suspects as control pieces to interact on the stack or interact with their hand. And then we have Counterbalance, which is the perfect setup, just like Legacy, when you've got these great setup cards. Gerrard's Verdict is our little nod to Hymn to Turak, but note that one of the most important things in this deck is surviving the first few turns, and what you do with this is actually tell the aggro player to either discard your action, which you're happy with, or discard your lands and you gain 3 to 6 life, which you're also happy with. These are our other removal spells, really, really good cards, obviously, and then we have some finishers. So Teferi is one of the draws to actually playing blue-white in Highlander, but we also have Tasiga, which is obviously the draw to playing black, because this often comes out as 1 mana and then you get to protect it with a counterspell, almost like a tempo deck in the early game, and in the late game it generates card advantage like a control deck. You have a high number of lands that come into play tapped, so you have to be very, very careful about that and play the slow game and leverage your 1 mana interaction pieces. The creature lands here finish the game. Seat of the Synod is something that you'll often fetch with Trinket Mage when you need to make a land drop, and also when you're blinking it with this, sometimes you just run out of artifacts and you want to find one and not whiff. These 2 cycling lands over here are quite important in smoothing out the deck, but mostly in drawing a card on your opponent's turn. So having a land that does that makes it really, really useful to Miracle. In the sideboard, we have them divided up into anti-combo, anti-control, and anti-creature. We have a little bit of a heavier package in the anti-creature package because you want to make sure that, again, you survive those early turns. What you can do is ensure that you have things that give you advantage with Aminatou. So you can blink Kitchen Finks and Wall of Omens for abusability of the -1. And if you don't want to use this particular interaction, you can play Timely Reinforcements and other, really powerful cards. The other note is that we're not very heavy on the graveyard use, so we get to play cards like Rest in Peace, which not many decks in Highlander get to do, because Highlander wants to use the graveyard a lot. A little dabble into the graveyard also allows us to use Skeletal Scrying, which cards, decks like Kespile and the like can't really abuse. First of all, because they use the graveyard a lot with delve spells, but second of all, because they don't run Spellseeker. Spellseeker fetching that in the control mirror is really, really good, because against control at the end of their turn, you can threaten to make an instant speed Painful Truths, or in the late game, it is quite comparable to Sphinx's Revelation. When you're against control and your life total doesn't matter. These creatures here come in because whenever your opponent takes out removal, you bring them in and it feels really, really good. And if you're in a control-heavy meta, you can play other things that replace Pyroblast, like Jace's Defeat. They aren't great cards, but sometimes you just have to play them because, again, we don't have red, we can't run Pyroblast, which is one of the really, really important reasons to be in red, aside from Dak Faden. Against combo, we have Flusterstorm and Duress, which can sometimes come in against control, depending on exactly how many slots you want to exchange. And then we have Graveyard Hate and anti-shops, but also your Back to Basics and the like decks. But what you want to do is ensure that a lot of your hate here can be fetched by either Spellseeker or Trinket Mage, because this just gives you quite a lot of redundancy post-board and also gives you a lot of value with Aminatou. So if you like the look of the deck, sleeve it up, have a go, and then tailor this according to your meta, and I'm sure that you're going to have a lot of fun.